Have you ever just looked around and wondered, how did we get here? To this world of, incredible wealth and mind-boggling technology, but also really staggering inequality. Well, we're going to dive deep and try to unpack the huge economic forces that have shaped, well, pretty much everything.
And really, it all boils down to one massive question. Why is our world so divided between the haves and the have-nots? To even begin to find an answer, we've got to become investigators. And our number one tool for this investigation, it's going to be economic history.
Now, don't let the name fool you, okay? This isn't your dusty old history class, all about memorizing dates. Economic history is more like detective work. It's the quest to explain how economies actually work and how they change over these vast stretches of time. It's really the key to unlocking the deep, underlying forces that built the world we live in today.
So to get a grip on our present, we have to go way, way back into our past. And the truth is, for most of human history, we were stuck. Seriously stuck, in something historians call the Malthusian trap. And at the heart of this trap, you find two very, very different ways for an economy to grow.
Okay, check this out, because this difference is absolutely crucial. On one side, you've got extensive growth. It's pretty simple. You add more stuff in, more farmers, more land, and you get more stuff out, like more food. But here's the catch. The average person isn't any better off. But then you've got intensive growth. Now this is the real game changer. This is about getting more output from the same inputs. How? By being smarter, through new technology, better ideas. This is the stuff that actually makes a society richer.
And here is the absolute kicker. For the vast, vast majority of our time on this planet, we're talking 99% of it, that second kind of growth, intensive growth, was basically off the table. It was impossible. We were living in a world of extensive growth only. And that created a really specific, really frustrating problem.
And here's what that trap looked like. So let's say a society gets lucky, has a great harvest, more food for everyone. Awesome, right? Well, not for long. See, more food didn't mean richer people, it just meant more people. The population would just grow and grow until all that extra food was gone and boom, everyone was right back at square one, just barely surviving. Any little bit of progress was literally eaten up by population growth. It was this brutal, vicious cycle. So what on earth finally broke it?
Well, one of the biggest and, most controversial answers is the rise of a whole new system, capitalism. And man, it's a word that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, including some of history's most brilliant thinkers.
For Karl Marx, capitalism was all about conflict. He saw it as a system with this relentless, compulsive drive to accumulate wealth. And it was all built on a fundamental tension, a struggle between the people who owned everything and the people who did the work. For him, this created an incredibly powerful, world-changing engine for sure, but it was an engine fueled by some deep, deep inequality.
Max Weber, on the other hand, had a totally different take. He looked at culture. He argued that capitalism wasn't just some economic machine, it was a mindset. A spirit of rational, careful calculation. He actually traced it all the way back to the Protestant work ethic, where hard work and, making money were seen as signs of God's favor. It gave the whole pursuit of profit a kind of moral green light.
And then you've got Joseph Schumpeter, who saw capitalism as this constant wild storm. He called its engine creative destruction. And what that is this relentless process where new ideas and new innovations driven by gutsy entrepreneurs are constantly destroying old industries and old ways of doing things to make way for the new. For Schumpeter, this messy, chaotic, churning process was the true secret to capitalism's incredible power.
But capitalism didn't just pop up in a bubble. Its rise was tangled up with another massive force that was basically rewiring the entire planet. Globalization. This is the story of how our world got more and more connected. The real question is, when did that story actually begin? And what's so interesting is there's no single easy answer. Historians just don't agree. Some trace it all the way back to the very first long-distance trade routes, thousands of years ago. Others will point to the 15th century, the Age of Discovery, when European ships first connected all the continents. And then a lot of people argue that true globalization is way more recent, really only kicking off in the 1980s, when technology finally made global connections deep enough to shape our everyday lives, no matter where we live.
Okay, so we've got these two huge engines of change, capitalism and globalization. But what if they're just the surface level?
What if the real answers lie in forces that are even more fundamental? Forces like the very land we live on, and even the way we have families.
To get your head around this, just picture a simple story of two imaginary lands. We'll call them Fertilia and Sterilia. So in Fertilia, the population grows super fast. Resources get stretched thin, the land gets overworked, and family wealth gets split between tons of kids, so nobody ever really gets ahead. They just stay stuck. But over in Sterilia, they do things differently. They limit population growth. Wealth gets concentrated, which allows parents to invest way more in each kid's education. And guess what? They take off. This simple little story shows how choices about family size can lead to completely different economic futures. And that leads us to another really sharp, kind of provocative question, famously asked by the scientist Jared Diamond. When you boil it all down, why was it a few hundred Spaniards who captured the mighty Inca emperor, and not a fleet of Inca ships sailing to conquer Spain? The answer, he argues, is geography.
So, Diamond's whole idea is that Eurasia basically won the geographic lottery. It just happened to have the best wild plants and animals that could be domesticated, which led to huge food surpluses. Those surpluses meant you could have big, dense cities with people who weren't farmers, people who could become soldiers or inventors or leaders. And crucially, Eurasia is wide. It's on an east-west axis. That meant crops, animals, ideas, and yeah, deadly germs could spread super easily across similar climates. These weren't small advantages. They compounded on themselves for thousands of years, giving Eurasia this massive head start in technology and immunity.
So, we've looked at the Malthusian trap, capitalism, globalization, demographics, and geography. We've thrown a lot at the wall here. So which one is it? What's the right answer? What is the final verdict? Well, here's the truth, and it's maybe the most important thing to take away from all of this. There is no single, simple answer. The world is way too messy and complex for that. The real goal here isn't to pick one theory and declare it the winner. The goal is to build a toolbox, a set of different mental models that you can use to make sense of the world.
And here is that toolbox. It's how historians think. First, you contextualize. You always have to understand the specific time and place you're looking at. Second, you find contrasts. You compare why things went one way here, but a totally different way over there. Third, you build narratives. You don't just list facts, you connect the dots into a story that makes sense. And finally, and this is the big one, you assess critically. You always have to question your sources, your information, and the hidden assumptions behind every single argument.
So, at the end of the day, we're not left with one easy answer. We're left with a much more powerful set of questions and a toolbox to help us explore them. We've seen the tools historians use to make sense of our past. The real challenge now is for you. Which of these tools will you pick up and use to understand the world around you today?